this is it's just a part of our spiritual DNA, I think, and it's something that I think he enjoys. That's a big part of living as an artist, is being content, creating, because God enjoys it when you do it.
Welcome to this episode of the Jesus in a Tragic World podcast with Greg Falls. This is Greg Falls here, and I hope that our time with each other in the coming moments will help you find fuller life in a relationship with God, yourself, and others. Welcome to the podcast. I'm joined by Kwok as we explore why creativity is fundamental to the human experience. Have you ever said, I'm just not the creative type? What if creativity isn't about painting or poetry, but about something deeper? Something spiritual. In this episode, we explore why we create, not as hobbyists or artists, but as people made in the image of a creator. From Genesis to the prophets to the culture-shaping power of art, discover how creativity is a sacred calling, one that includes you, whether you realize it or not. Let's get started. JP, I'm real glad you're here. Several episodes ago, you helped me work through a whole series on steps to the recovery path. But this time, you're the guest, and I am interviewing you about creativity as a deeply spiritual, scriptural ability and even discipline that can bring us into greater levels of life and even experience of the good news of Jesus.
Well said.
Yeah. So welcome here.
Thank you.
To the podcast. Let me just say this. You and I serve on the staff of the same church. I'm the senior pastor. You are the worship pastor. And for the last 17 plus years, I've been watching you engage a team and an entire group of volunteers in the creative process over and over again. Yeah. I've watched you grow in and develop skills and lead others in the development of skills to tell stories, the greatest story ever told, the story of Jesus, in ways that are creative and in ways that engage people. I've seen you analyze and break down the creative process to help understand it yourself more and to be able to bring people in to that process so that they too can engage their creative potential. And so that's why I asked you to be a part of this an entire little mini series that we're going to have on the creative process from a kingdom perspective. And so I'd love to just ask you, what does it mean to reflect God's nature through creativity in our lives? And tell me a little bit, however you want to go, just go with it however you want. Tell me about your journey in the creative process and then what you've learned about how God has made us creative beings.
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't consider myself to be especially creative. I don't. I think those who, though, do like talking about subjects are people who have struggled through things and have learned more about themselves and what they aspire to do. Therefore, they're more informed about it. Those who do it well probably don't know as much about how to describe it. So this is very apropos, I think, just because I've had to climb the ladder of gaining skills to do what I aspire to try to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the question basically you asked me is why is creativity a spiritual exercise?
Well, what does it mean to reflect God's nature through creativity in our lives?
Yes.
And then how did you discover the creative process in your own life?
Yeah. Well, first of all, creativity is part of why we were put on this earth. It really is. God created everything ex nihilo, which means from nothing. It's a concept we really have a hard time understanding.
Right.
But even if you try to wrap your mind around it, we're so finite. We don't have that capacity. But he did gift us. He gave us his image. He created us separate from all creation. Genesis, the book of Genesis, especially chapter 3, really defines that. And we've used this particular passage
In
for lots of
previous
things.
episodes,
But in this particular framework, God created us separate from the rest of creation, although he made us from dust. So we're tethered to this creation.
Right.
But he gave us this gift that's separate. And creativity is not necessarily the gift. It's image bearing, because animals are creative. You can watch squirrels find creative ways to get the bird feeders.
Yes, indeed. Certainly in my backyard, yes.
Yeah, you can even train an elephant to paint. I don't know how much of that is intuitive creativity or trained creativity. I don't know. But bottom line is that animals can exhibit creative tendencies and proclivities. So it's not the creative proclivity necessarily. It's the fact that we are born to create in a way that uniquely reflects him. We're made to glorify him.
Right.
The rest of creation glorifies him just because of their nature. The heavens and earth declare the glory of the Lord, says Psalm 19. Earth pours forth speech day and night.
Yeah, beautiful.
We pour forth speech by proclaiming it. Our existence does declare his glory as separate from creation.
Yes.
But we have the unique calling and capacity to verbalize that, to create something that displays his glory, that makes people think about his glory. We are called to call one another into a response to who he is. Animals don't have that as far as we know.
Right.
So we're uniquely created as the Imago Dei. And part of that Imago Dei expectation and commissioning in the Garden of Eden was to steward the earth.
Yeah.
In stewarding the earth, you have to use multiple talents and skills. You know, it's not just gardening. We imagine stewarding as let's prevent a forest fire by trimming some over here. And of course, it was a perfect world, so we don't know what existed then. You're going to maintain some order within the animal kingdom. You're definitely going to have to grow some crops. You're going to have to exercise. But I think there were tasks they had to do that tamed the world, even though the world was perfect. And we have some hints at this that are explicitly stated in the book of Genesis itself. Mikado Fujima is an incredible man. He's written several books. He was actually appointed to the National Council of Arts by President Bush. And he has taught at Fuller Seminary. He's written several books. I've really enjoyed his writing. It's helped me to kind of process my own creative desires and how to express those in ways that glorify God and to rest in that, just rest in glorifying God. And so he gives us this picture of the book of Genesis where God puts Adam in the garden and he immediately gives him a task. He says, I want you to name all of the creatures that I've created.
Yeah.
He doesn't tell him why. He just tells him, name them.
Yeah.
So that's part of stewarding the earth.
Right.
So Adam starts naming animals. Now,
which gives definition.
Yeah, well, it gives definition to his world.
Distinction.
Yeah. We don't even know where this language came from. We're not told any of these things.
Right.
But he has a language. He's been gifted. He's creating order out of this. He's probably creating categories in his language that's maybe poetic. It may even define physical attributes of certain creatures, Right. Just so it'll be easier for other people to relate to as they're eventually going to come on board. Although I don't know what he's thinking about community if he's the only person there, which I do believe that is a biblical fact.
Right.
And then he goes through this whole process of naming every creature. And the Bible doesn't tell us what that scope was, but I can imagine if it's comprehensive, it would be fish, insect, animals, birds.
Yeah.
God probably brings them to him just as he did, just as Noah was brought animals.
In the same way we see in the categories of chapter 1 of Genesis in the creative order, there was categories.
Yes.
God had already created categories.
Seed-bearing, fruit-bearing plants, in their kinds and in their kinds. Right. God says in their kinds. So Adam's probably cueing off of that a little bit, although we don't know the order.
Yeah.
And then at the end of all this, he probably has a really good time. It's probably challenging, rewarding.
Maybe over time.
Maybe could take a long time to do.
Yeah.
And then and he's got all this memorized because he's got this perfect mind.
Assuming it wasn't written down. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we don't know. And he gets to the end of this, and God doesn't really say anything, but Adam does. He doesn't find a suitable partner.
So there's a longing for something more.
There's several things going on in that one phrase, right?
Wow.
You got completion of a project.
Yeah.
And yet it wasn't as rewarding as he expected because it left him to another question.
Yeah.
And then he ends up knowing in that moment that it's something he can't solve. So it points him back to God.
Yeah, because naming something isn't going to make it appear.
You're right. But he knows there, and here's what's interesting.
Something missing.
Yeah, this is going to come later on in our conversation. I think we're going to come back to this, but he knows there's something out there too that could exist.
Yeah.
That should exist.
Yeah.
And God has to come in and provide it. And he takes from Adam to make it. And we don't really know why, in a bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. It does make sense theologically, but if you think about it creatively as well, using that as your bedrock truth, I think we can also assume that God was like, yes, that longing will be provided from you. Yeah. And I'm not going to take it out of the dust. I'm not going to take it. I'm going to take it from you because you long for it. And I'm going to give it to you. And it's going to be everything that you need.
Something even beyond what we probably can find words for.
Yeah, really.
But truly. I think it's something we can feel.
Yeah. Well, it makes me emotional right now, to be honest.
I'm noticing that, how it's impacting you. And there is that sense of the creative process comes from a longing that there needs to be something more.
Yeah.
Something more. Yeah. That we need to reach for that isn't here right now.
Yes.
But in a rearrangement of what God made. Yeah. In a further definition of what God has provided, a further distinction. We can get something more, or a need met, or something that's missing. Found.
There's a couple of things you just pointed out that I like to riff off of.
Yeah.
One is this. You said this in passing, but it's very profound. I don't think we can't create ex nihilo. We can only create from the substances that God has given us. We, even in our most inventive state, our most original ideas are just moving around the materials that God is already provided for us. And in that, it should always point back to Him as the provider. Even if we're, and also in what you said is very true, creativity will always point to God eventually, but it can also be practical. Needs reveal creativity. This necessity is a mother of invention. People use that phrase all the time because it's absolutely true. There's different, we'll talk about different types of creativity later, but it is absolutely true. Needs, creativity is sparked by a need, and defining that need is really important for the artist. And everyone is an artist, by the way. We're going to talk about that later. It really is true. I'm not an artist. No, you really, really are, because God made you one.
Right.
And just accept it, like I've tried to, So yeah, good word, Pastor.
Well, we don't, the Hebrew word in Genesis chapter 1, you have, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The word for created is bara. And bara is used, we don't bara, but God baras. Bara is that creation out of nothing.
Yes.
And the rest after that is a defining things, or taking the chaos, the substance, the chaotic substance, and rearranging it into a definable order that really defines life, right? Because even we were created out of the substance of the bara.
Right.
The bara came, and there's all this substance, whatever that is, whatever fundamental building block of life that was, that God created. But then when He created us out of the dust of the earth. Yeah. So in other words, we were created out of that substance, which was order, and breathed into it the breath of life. But that order came out of something that He had created ex nihilo. Right. So we don't do the ex nihilo creation, the bara. Yeah. But we do get to being built in the image of God. We do get to participate in the creation of order. And
Yes.
you even mentioned that other animals do that too,
Yeah.
beaver making a dam or something like that. But
Yeah, they're creating
we can do it
order.
for the glory of God in a whole
Yeah.
different way.
Well, and I think the reason we do that is because we're from creation, from the dust, but angels were created apart from this creation. They exist. They're not tethered to here, right?
Right.
But we are tethered to this world. Therefore, when we create, we're creating from this world. We already talked about that. But we're also creating with heaven in mind.
Yes.
Even those who are not regenerated in their soul are always creating with a sense of justice or a sense of some kind of divine impulse, because that breath of life,
Eternity is embedded in their soul, as it says in
Ecclesiastes 3:11. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's always there. I think it's a catalyst for creativity within the human soul. And it's like this bridge to, I want to express something that I absolutely know is true, but I can't define what it is for those who are not connected to Christ. For those who are connected to Christ, I think it's always about, wow, there's an impulse within my soul to build a better bridge, because I want to help people. And I want to be a good steward of this earth and organize it well. That's a great way to create things. And then there's the other side where you got the prophetic voice that's out there saying, guys, this isn't right. This isn't right. This isn't right. I know it's not right because of God's word, but it's also something in my soul that I'm tethered to, but also connected to, that seems divine, and I can't stop. I'm compelled, as you might say, to create.
So the creative process, or creativity as an ability, as a calling, as a natural human impulse, is something we inherited from the Lord. I mean, the Lord has created that, embedded that into the fabric of who we are. Tell us more about just why we create.
Sure.
Break it down for us.
I think the why, we were just mentioning that, I think because God has put it in our very souls. Ecclesiastes 3:11, we have this sense of eternity.
Yeah.
But I think it does manifest itself in different ways in different people. God has given us a wonderful variety of skills and abilities and personalities. And some people dream, and some people want to create order. And of course, there's lots of different, there's a wide spectrum, right? But even if you're just wanting to make something for a friend that is connects you to them in a special way through things that you appreciate about them. And my wife loves to receive handmade things. Oh. And you would think, as someone who has creative inclinations, I would love to do that. but it's actually, I'm such a perfectionist. It's so hard because I'm like, well, I'll never do it the way I want to. So, and, but that's even part of it too. This idea that creativity is a responsibility, and that is just a gift from the Lord. It's, all the way throughout Christendom, even, we have, even after Scripture is canonized, we still have this impulse to create hymns and to find unique metaphors and analogies that will preach and help people understand God's word. Writing poetry to express love to someone that you're wooing, and or just someone that you've been married to, and you're just wanting to share that experience. Journaling creatively
Bible talks about new songs.
Talks about, Colossians 3:16, 17. Worship the Lord with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. It says actually admonish one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, which means it's an active way of applying creativity to the other person. And of course, Ephesians, 2:8, we were created in Christ Jesus for good works. Well, these works have to be things that he's giving us to do, and they are going to involve some measure of creativity, creating order, creating ideas, creating symbols. This is it's just a part of our spiritual DNA, I think, and it's something that I think he enjoys. That's a big part of living as an artist, is being content, creating because God enjoys it when you do it. And maybe no one else understands, but you're called to express a thought and emotion. So many great works of art were not great when they were first created. It took time for people to discover how great they really were
and appreciate
them years after the artist or composer's death. It's discovered that Felix Mendelssohn, Bach was fairly well known during his day, but he wasn't like a superstar. He would be invited to courts, and display his talents and things. He wrote the Brandenburg concertos because of that. But apart from that, Felix Mendelssohn, century or so later, multiple centuries, said, "Hey, look at this world, look at this," and gave him a platform that we still enjoy today. That someone says, "Man, this is something that at the time we didn't realize what this was, but this is beyond. This is spiritual." Yeah. And Bach used to sign it, "Soli Deo Gloria," to God be the glory alone. At the bottom of every manuscript, he was glorifying the Lord, and I think that's why his music endures in some part too. Yeah, is the spiritual testimony that he was giving. So, and
how can we apply the creative process? And we'll get into this in deeper ways throughout this little mini series. But how can the person, like I said, the everyday person, the mom at home, the person out in the office working, or folks parenting their children, the school teacher, the doctor, or the nurse, how can creativity or an acceptance that God put the ability of creativity into them, even if they have to dare to believe that that's possible, how can that practically impact their life spiritually, practically, emotionally? How can that relate?
That's a big question. I hope I can answer it.
Well, you don't have to answer it all now because we're going to flesh this out over episodes. But.
No, I do have some ideas that immediately come to mind. Now they're very basic. Okay, they're not going to be extremely profound.
Well, no, that's good.
First of all, we're children of God. Any gift that he gives us that we exercise for his glory, and stewarding our gifts to serve others and him, is a representation of us stewarding our talents well for his glory. So you do more acts of creativity every day than you register without knowing that you're being creative. Yeah. And but no, that's not to minimize artistry, and artistry is a completely separate subject, and we'll get into that later, probably a different episode. But just creativity on its basic level is being who you are for God's glory, making micro decisions that impact your environment in ways that you were created uniquely. Because there'll never be another Greg Falls, and that means your fingerprint living in this world is automatically creative because there's never another one of you. And so everything that you do is uniquely you. You may do something that someone else does identically, but it's still uniquely you because there's never going to be another you.
Right. In that context. In that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for sure. Now, the second part of this is there are times in your life when you're going to flex creatively too. There are times I think, I've seen this. I'm going to mention someone that we both know, okay? And people won't know who this is necessarily until he becomes famous one day. But there's a member of our church, and his name is David Hamilton. And he's always been a creative man. I've been to his apartment years ago, like 17 years ago when I first moved to Owensboro. And I was like, wow, this is really well decorated. And his wife goes, yeah, David decorates everything. He's the interior decorator. And I was like, wow, that made me feel good because I have that inclination in my family too. I'm the more overt creative one, although my wife is extremely creative. She's just a different creative type. Dave and I share a similar creative type. And we'll talk about that later too. But later on, David goes through his entire career dabbling in different types of artistic expressions because this is who he is. He retires, and all of a sudden in 2020 during the pandemic, he picks up a paintbrush with no training and starts like he's been doing it for decades. And it's like a progeny.
Incredible, riveting paintings.
And now he's winning awards and he keeps going and he enjoys it. And I'm like, and he was a photographer for years. He did that on the side. That was it was a creative outlet.
He did some stuff for me in terms of articles for our denominational magazines. And
so, I mean, he's obviously born with a certain gifting, but his eye has always been there because he could take good photographs. But he then applied it in a brand new way that he'd never experienced himself before. And so he had been living his whole life being obedient to God's call to use his gifts to glorify him and serve others. Then he gets into this one season where he has freedom and impulse and inspiration, and all of a sudden,
artistic, with his creativity.
Man, so that's kind of the model. I've seen that play out in many different ways. I'm even remembering former President George W. Bush, when he retired from office, he started painting wounded soldiers.
Yes.
No one knew he could do that. At least I didn't.
Yes.
He had a similar experience, and
they're very unique paintings.
Yeah, they are.
My mother and father-in-law have in their house a signed copy of his book of paintings.
Oh, okay.
My brother-in-law knows him personally and got a signed copy for.
Oh, that's neat.
And they're unique.
Yeah.
It's a unique style.
Yeah. He has a certain voice, right? And so I think, there are times to feel the pressure if your occupation is to create. That's a different category, okay? And that's a different conversation. But if you're just someone who's a doctor, or of course teachers are always creative. My goodness,
absolutely.
So many creative.
Yeah.
In fact, I think a lot of creative people go into teaching because they can use it every day. But
and adapt it each time to, okay, this kid has this needs and this unique set of circumstances. How do I engage? How do I connect with their heart and their head?
Right. Yeah. But accountants, that
creative accounting.
Well, I thought of that joke. You just told it. I was like, I was going to let it go, but you brought it out.
There might be creative ways to report it that are accurate. That's we certainly want to say that.
I mean, there is something to be said. That's funny. And I thought it. I was like, I'm going to let it go. I'm proud of you. By the way, that was funny. Yeah. Seriously, I think if you're an accountant, I think you can definitely see the artistry of numbers, and that numbers are a gift from God, and they can be organized in ways that help people. If you're going to help with budgets, if you're going to help look at what need, like our church budget, you're looking, well, what's the priority? What's the need? What's the allocation? It would be ridiculous to say that's not a creative
being
process.
Creative in the way, not in the way that it's represented so much as a creative in the way of how is that information made accessible so it's useful to people as they make decisions.
Yes.
It takes creativity,
graphs,
to do
charts,
that.
presentations,
and it's lashed to rules. One of the things we've found at our church, and we haven't mentioned this yet directly, but our church has an arts collective.
Right.
Where, once again, art is a form of creativity. It's not the only one, but we have a ministry here called our Bellevue Arts Collective, and we have a lot of people in that ministry, and they're creating some amazing, wonderful things. And whoever's the director at the time gives them a theme,
perspective,
gives them rules. They write up a prospectus that grounds them. Say, we're going to have this theme. There's these parameters, and those rules actually don't squelch the creativity.
No, not at all.
But force it into being more alert to the possible creative opportunities.
Yes. Well, that's actually a creative theory that's taught. And so, first of all, about the Arts Collective, we are very proud of that. And it's a great opportunity for artists to express themselves together around themes and to see multiple iterations of the same idea through the individuality of how God has created each person.
Right.
And it's not just paintings. We have, poetry, short stories, music, and
sometimes physical art, the 3D.
Yes, stained glass, sculpture. So that's a great example of a specific type of creating. But since we're here right now, and we might explore this later, but I think it'd be a good time because you brought it up. When I was in graduate school, I was a music theory, and I also had a composition focus. And so I was writing music scholastically and artistically, and I was being evaluated on that, and of course it's evaluating art is such a hard thing to do objectively anyways. And I remember one of my mentors at that time and teachers, he gave me this theory that's used by many, many artists. And it's really stuck with me. And I was really young. I was like probably, 24 at the time, late graduate school. And he said, the more you limit yourself, the more creative you will be. And he said, for instance, he goes, if you just say, I'm going to write with 4 notes and don't make them, of course, it's going to get a little nerdy, for the musicians out there, you don't have to be diatonic. You don't have to be boring. It can be chromatic, which means you're painting outside of the natural order. He says, so you can break all kinds of rules, he goes, but if the more you limit yourself, the more creative you will be because you automatically see what's immediately available to manipulate. You don't have this huge universe of opportunity. You have this small scope. Because if you ever stuck in any type of, if you got some kind of writing block or anything like that, he goes, automatically limit yourself to the least amount of material that you can use to accomplish your goal, and you will become more creative than you've ever imagined. People who just work in, black and white every once in a while, or, Picasso, when he went through his blue period, you're automatically reducing some of the scope so that you can, and with that limitation, you broaden the possibilities that people have never explored through what is limited in your scope of work, if that makes sense. And so, it's called the limiting principle of creativity, and it's highly, highly effective.
Even engineers,
certainly,
have to be. I mean, all the stuff that we're using right now to record this podcast,
right?
These are highly developed forms of technology that demanded very creative people to come and look at a narrow problem that needed to be solved, that had very real angular limitations wrapped around them, and to somehow, and physical laws, that can't, that are unchangeable, and to be able to see creatively make the right connections to create catalytic possibilities for whatever function they're going to produce. And
well said.
Yeah,
well said.
And it takes people. I read years ago Your Creative Power by an Alex Osborne, and it was a book that was published by Motorola, and he was somebody that was educating engineers and people that were solving problems to create technologies and services. And so he was teaching people how to engage in the creative discipline and its work. It's an incredible thing.
To go full circle on the question you asked me earlier, just to make sure I've answered it succinctly. There are seasons in your life where you will manifest creativity in different ways. Sometimes it'll be more robust. Sometimes it won't be. But I think God...
Sometimes it'll be artistic, maybe, and then sometimes
be functional.
It's just functional.
Yeah. And I think we should be
How am I going to get
that.
this baby to drink the whole bottle so it doesn't starve and I can get a nap in?
Someone invented the choo-choo train. It's worked.
Right, an airplane spoon to the mouth, and all of those. It takes that creativity. And, business entrepreneurs, they have to be creative. How do we get to the market?
Steve Jobs was immensely creative.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you and I, we know people, even in our we live in a relatively small city, as cities go. But we have, in our church, we have several entrepreneurs that have started businesses, and they had to get creative in how they were going to organize, how they were going to solve problems, how they were going to market, how they were going to address crises, how they were going to seize opportunities, all the way down to what their office space was going to look like in order to be conducive to practicalities. And what we want is for kingdom-minded people who know the Lord, to awaken to their God-given creative calling and to recognize maybe I'm not artistic, and maybe I am, but that doesn't mean I'm not, or maybe I don't perceive myself as artistic. That does not mean I'm not creative. Hopefully we're opening in this miniseries their eyes to, yes, you are creative, and let's help you submit that to God and discover the Lord in the process.
Yeah, the irony in this is that very few people are known for being artists.
Right. Yeah.
And most people who work in the arts don't receive a lot of financial reward for it.
Right.
It doesn't sustain them, the majority of people. And yet people use creativity every single day to provide for others in their family.
Yeah.
And they don't even know it, but their creativity is making an impact every minute of their lives, And so I think there's this great irony that people aspire, to, well, that's what an artist does. An artist is going, oh man, but I don't know if I'm making a difference.
Well, you're creative when you come home and you go, I got a family to feed and I didn't prepare, and I'm going to open up the refrigerator and I'm going to go, look at all the ingredients in the cabinet in the refrigerator.
Will this make?
What can I put together? We want people to see that is fundamentally what the creative process is, all the way down to, even what we see in the creation and God's inclusion of man in the creative ordering of things. And that we can then, and we'll build upon this in the miniseries, how we can then take that into our discipleship, following Jesus, and our witness, how we tell the gospel.
There are more intentional ways to use creativity. Right. So this is setting the ground for saying you are creative by being an image bearer, and you're being creative when you don't know it. But there are intentional ways that you can exercise creativity.
And we want people who are listening to this episode to tune into the next episode and the one right after that to help see how then you take this calling that you have by the very existence that you enjoy, that God gave you, that you have this creative calling for your time, for your world, and for your calling in your relationship with Jesus.
Amen.
And we're going to help you understand that a little better.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is a good place to stop.
I think so.
And we want people to tune in to the next episode, download that when it comes. And we really do hope that you would do a few things such as subscribe if you've not already subscribed, so that you can continually be updated as to what new episode releases, usually each week here. And we really also want you to leave a review or share this with a friend so that we can get the word out and can encourage more people to live fully in this tragic world. God bless. And until next time, may the Lord be so ever close to you as you engage the world creatively.